Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. Welcome to the online lecture on nonlinear control systems. Today this is third lecture of the nonlinear control systems course review, and so far we have revised about half of the course, in which we have looked at some mathematical preliminaries, the stability theory, and we have also looked at we have started to look at the control Lyapunov functions and the controller design for nonlinear systems. In this regard, we have already looked at Sontag control in the last lecture. So today we continue our discussion on control Lyapunov functions and the controller design for nonlinear systems. We start with a topic or a method that you can use to determine the control Lyapunov function for a nonlinear system using the theory of linear quadratic regulator for the LTI systems. So here is how you can do it. Consider a nonlinear affine system x dot equal f of x plus g of x times u, where origin is the equilibrium point. Then you linearize this system and you find x dot equal ax plus bu, where a is the partial f by partial x evaluated at the equilibrium point, and b is g of x evaluated at the equilibrium point. Then you pose the LQR problem on this LTI system, where you define the cost function x transpose qx plus u transpose ru in the usual manner, where q and r are positive definite matrices, and we seek to design a control u is equal to kx that minimize this cost function. And for that, if AB is stabilizable, then there is a known fact that u is given by minus r inverse b transpose px, where p is a positive definite symmetric solution of Riccati equation, which is given like this. So here the intuition is that you linearize the system, you pose the LQR problem, you solve the Riccati equation, but instead of designing the controller on the system, you use the solution of the Riccati equation to define the Lyapunov function for the original nonlinear system. So if you use the P matrix of that is solution of Riccati equation in this LQR problem, then V of x is equal to x transpose px is a CLF for the nonlinear model. So once you get the CLF for the nonlinear model, it is very easy to design the Sontag controller using the CLF for the system. So this is a method you can use, which is a very interesting approach, that LQR based methodology is used in determining the CLF for the nonlinear system. Next is the backstepping. Backstepping is a recursive feedback control design approach, in which what you do is you consider a nonlinear system with two subsets of states. So one group of states is called x1 and the other group of states is called x2, and x2 so it should be such that x2 must appear in the dynamics of x1. So x1 dot should be some function of x2, and it could also be a function of x1 as well. So x1 dot should be a function of x1 and x2, and x2 dot should have a control input u in its dynamics. So x2 dot must have u in the dynamics of x2. If such a case occurs, then you can apply backstepping based recursive feedback design. In order to do that, you have to make x2 behave like a virtual feedback control for x1. For example, x2 can be defined as some function alpha of x1 which asymptotically stabilize the dynamics of x1. So prove the stability of x1 with x2 equal alpha of x1, and then in order to prove the stability, you will have to use some Lyapunov function. We call it v of x1. And then you can, once you have stabilized a part of the system with a virtual control, you define z as an error variable of which is equal to x2 minus its ideal value of alpha of x1. We write the new system in terms of z and x1 and prove the stability of the system with states z and x1 by defining u appropriately, and this yields us a control input u that basically stabilizes that is a function of x1 and z. And the final step of backstepping feedback control design is you rewrite the input u as a function of x1 and x2. So in stating feedback, so since this is a review of the course, that is why I have put together a slide which simply states the steps or procedure involved in recursive feedback control design. But of course this will you will be struggling in order to visualize how this happens. So to strengthen your visualization, we look at an example. Let's suppose x1 dot equal x1 square plus x2 dot equal u, and then which virtual control can be defined as x2 equal minus x1 square minus x1, which means that if you put x2 equal to this expression in x1 dot, then x1 dot equals minus x1, which is asymptotically stable, for which the stability can be proved using this Lyapunov function v of x1 equal 1/2 x1 square. So v dot will be minus x1 square, which is negative definite in the as far as this x1 dynamics are concerned. Then once the virtual control is designed, you define the new state variable or error variable as x2 minus the desired value of x2, and then rewrite the original system in terms of x1 and z. So x1 dot becomes minus x1 plus z, because x1 dot was equal to x1 square plus x2. So instead of x2 you put z minus x1 square minus x1, and this will give you x1 dot equal minus x1 plus z, and z dot will be of course x2 dot plus 2 times x1 into x1 dot plus x1 dot. So this is how it is. Using this expression of z, if you take derivative on both sides, you get z dot like this. And if you plug in the value of x2 dot is u, 2x1 into x1 dot is plus, if you add that into x1 dot, you get, after some simplifications, you get this expression. So this is the system in terms of z and x1. So for this system in terms of z and x1, and you choose the Lyapunov function as one previous Lyapunov function vx1 plus 1/2 z square. That will give you v dot equal to this expression. And in order to make this v dot negative definite, you have to define u appropriately here. Let us say we define u as minus 2x1 plus 1 z minus x1, which will cancel out this term inside the bracket, and the whole term inside the bracket will become minus z minus x1, and minus z multiplied by z will become minus z square, and minus x1 multiplied by z will become minus z times x1, which will cancel out with this plus z x1, and the v dot will become minus z square minus x1 square, and which is negative definite in x1 and z. Excuse me. So now final step is to write u in terms of x1 and x2, and that completes that is the backstepping based controller design. So it's a lengthy procedure, but it basically what it does is that you don't have to deal with the whole system at a time. So at a time you are only dealing with part of the system which is of lesser order. So it gives you some freedom in terms of mathematical difficulties involved in designing the controller. It's a lengthy procedure, but it simplifies the complexities. Then there is also integrator backstepping. So in integrator backstepping, you consider the again affine system x dot equal f of x plus g of x times u, but at this time it has u is a state of the system, it's not the control input, and u is basically the state such that whose derivative is equal to the control input v is the control input for this. So next we continue, we choose the Lyapunov function vax. So this is a defined result in integrator backstepping. So if you have excuse me, if you have a system of this type where some part of the system is affine and the other part of the system is just the integrator of a state, so integrator of the control input is equal to the state. So you will see that this type of Lyapunov function will always work. So if you define a virtual control u is equal to some function alpha x, which is asymptotically stabilize this part of the system, then u minus alpha x square 0.5 into u minus alpha x square plus the Lyapunov function, which proves the stability of this system with u equal alpha x, will always be the Lyapunov function for this whole system. And then you have one possible stabilizing control law for the whole system, that is given by v is equal to minus u minus alpha x plus partial alpha x by partial x into f of x plus g of x minus partial v by partial x. So this is this v of x, so partial vx by partial x into g of x. So this is one possible control law. So this backstepping result, basically it has some underlying assumptions in it on v dot and v, but most of those assumptions are, you know, v positive definite and v dot less than the negative of some positive definite function, which are quite standard assumptions, and we are not going to discuss those because this is the review lecture, not the original lecture on backstepping. So you can apply integrator backstepping result or integrator backstepping lemma on any system, and you can straight away from the system, once you stabilize this x dot equal f of x plus g of x into u using some u equal alpha x, then you don't have to do the second part. Second part can be done straight from these equations. So we revisit the example that we did just in the previous a couple of slides ago. So in this example we already have f of x1 is equal to x1 square and g of x1 is equal to 1, and instead of u we have x2 and instead of v we have u. So as before, alpha x1 is equal to minus x1 square minus x1, and v of x1 is equal to 0.5 x1 square, and then va from the integrator backstepping lemma is v of x1 plus 0.5 x2 minus alpha x1 square, and then that's what it is. And also the control law from the lemma is given by this equation. So if we substitute x2 minus alpha x is this thing, and then partial alpha x by partial x1, that will be minus 2x1 minus 1, and this is f of x plus g of x minus partial v by partial x1, that will be x1 itself, and g of x is 1, so partial v by partial x into g of x1 is simple x1. So that gives us the control for the, so we have designed two controllers for the same system, one using the normal backstepping and other using the backstepping lemma, integrator backstepping lemma. So that should give you a good review on how backstepping control works. Next we discuss the results in classical nonlinear control systems theory. We have basically discussed three results in this course. I will review all three of them in this today's lecture. First result is the absolute stability theory and the circle criterion. Second result is small gain theorem and the input output stability, and the third result is describing function and stability of limit cycles in a linear system with nonlinear feedback. So so absolute stability problem is something like this. We are trying to stabilize this LTI system which has a nonlinearity in its feedback, but the special thing about this nonlinearity is that this nonlinearity is a sector nonlinearity. So if you want to know what is sector nonlinearity, you have to go back to the original lecture on absolute stability theory, but here I will just briefly say that a sector nonlinearity is a nonlinear function that can be enclosed in a sector which includes the origin. Okay, so in the presence of sector nonlinearity as a feedback, what are the conditions under which this feedback system is globally asymptotically stable? So the solution for the special case is when the sector of the nonlinearity is from 0 to some non-zero value. So if the sector starts with a 0 slope and ends at a non-zero, so this is a special form of a sector. If this type of sector occurs, then this linear LTI system with nonlinear feedback can be represented by this corresponding state space system, where x dot equal ax plus bu and y is equal to cx, and then u is equal to this nonlinearity minus phi times phi of t comma y. So this is the state space representation of the same system, LTI system with nonlinear feedback. And this state space can be converted into transfer function by using C into Si minus A inverse B. And then once one could prove the absolute stability of this system using Lyapunov function based approach under the following conditions. If AB is controllable, if the state space representation of this system is controllable and AC is observable, then, and also the third condition is that identity plus beta times C into Si minus A inverse B is strictly positive real. If these three conditions are satisfied by this state space representation of this feedback system, then this feedback system is absolutely stable. Absolute stability means globally asymptotically stable in the presence of sector nonlinearity. So this is the result for the special case where, you know, the sector is starting from 0 value, and but for general case you have full circle criteria, which means that, you know, the sector is from alpha to beta. So if the for general case of a sector, the feedback system is globally asymptotically exponentially stable if AB is controllable, AC is observable. These two conditions are the same. Then the third condition is GS, which is C into Si minus A inverse B, this one, times identity plus alpha GS inverse should be bibostable. And the fourth condition is that identity plus beta GS into identity plus alpha GS inverse should be strictly positive real. So if you put alpha equal to 0 into these four conditions boils down to the previous slide conditions, like the conditions for slope 0 to beta. So this is the general circle criteria, and if these four conditions are satisfied, only then the system is absolutely stable. So here I would also like to revise what is strictly positive real, because we need the certain transfer function to be strictly positive real in order to prove absolute stability. How do we determine if a transfer function matrix is strictly positive real or not? So here is how we determine that. An n cross n proper rational transfer function matrix GS is strictly positive real if and only if GS must be Hurwitz, all of its poles must be at in open left half plane, and G of j omega plus G transpose of minus j omega must be greater than 0 for all values of omega, and G of infinity plus G transpose of infinity must be positive definite. So if these three conditions are satisfied by a transfer function matrix, then we would say that it is strictly positive real. And if there is a scalar case, if it is a single transfer function, then it's easier to determine whether it's strictly positive real or not. It just have to be Hurwitz as before. The real part of the G of j omega has to be greater than 0 for all omega, and G of infinity has to be greater than 0. So this is how you determine strictly positive real property of any scalar or vector, scalar or matrix transfer function. So next we look at an example of absolute stability. Suppose there is an LTI system which has a feedback nonlinearity, and the LTI system is G of S equal S plus 1 over S plus 2, first order linear system with a 0 at -1 and a pole at -2. And suppose the sector nonlinearity is phi of y equal y for, so this is like saturation nonlinearity, which is equal to y for y between -1 and 1, and is equal to 1 or -1 depending upon whether y is greater than 1 or y is less than 1. So the nonlinearity is a saturation function with sector 0 to 1, and therefore the only we only need the three conditions for absolute stability, First is the controllability and observability. These are trivially satisfied because this transfer function clearly has no pole zero cancellations. So it means that when you convert it into state space, the state space will be controllable and observable. And strictly positive real condition is also satisfied in this case because poles of the transfer function are in open left half plane, and also real part of the transfer function is 0.5 into g of j omega plus g of minus j omega, which is equal to this, and this is positive for all values of omega because it involves omega square and positive constants. You can verify that. And the third property for strictly positive real is g of infinity has to be greater than 0. In this case, g of infinity is 1 because if you put s equal to infinity, then what happens is that so 1 over s becomes 0, and you can basically prove that so this g of infinity will turn out to be 1, and this has to be okay. This has been done by L'Hopital rule because once you have infinity over infinity situation, then what you do is you take derivative of the numerator and the denominator. So limit s approaches infinity of s plus 1 over s plus 2 is equal to limit s approaches infinity derivative of s plus 1 divided by derivative of s plus 2. The derivative of s plus 1 is 1 and the derivative of s plus 2 is 2. So g of infinity in this case, even if it is 1 by 2, it's still greater than 0. All right, so we have to determine absolute stability for another. We look at another example. We have this LTI system and the nonlinearity belongs with the sector 1 to 3, and since the transfer function is irreducible, the controllability observability conditions are satisfied trivially. And the next is that g of s into 1 plus alpha g of x inverse, that is equal to this this quantity, and this will be this is equal to this, and which is bibostable by Routh-Hurwitz criteria because the second order system and all the coefficients having same sign in the denominator means that the system is asymptotically stable, and asymptotically stable system are automatically bibostable, so the system is bibostable. Finally, this condition identity plus identity in this case will be 1 because this is a scalar case. 1 plus beta gs, beta in this case is 3 into 1 plus alpha gs inverse. Alpha in this case is 1, and when you substitute this value, this is strictly positive real because first of all it is asymptotically stable Hurwitz. Second of all, the real part becomes this, which is positive for all values of omega. And thirdly, the limit as approaches infinity is calculated again by L'Hopital rule by taking differentiation. This time you have to differentiate twice in order to get the limits, and the limit will be 1, and that will give you the strictly positive real property of the transfer function, which means that the system is absolutely stable. The next discussion is the input output stability or Lebesgue stability or L stability, or which is relevant result that is important is small gain theorem. And consider the following closed loop system where you have one system in the feed forward path and there is a feedback, and another system. This can be you can imagine this as a plant being controlled by, this is plant and a controller, and this is a sensor, and there is a sensor noise, and then in the presence of sensor noise, how the feedback, so how the input output stability fares out. Assume that both H1 and H2 are causal and small gain stable or L stable, such that H1 there is some constant K1 which is finite, so that H1 of the input E1 is the output of this h1 is y1 is basically less than or equal to k1 times e1, and the magnitude of the output is less than or equal to gain times the magnitude of the input plus some biasing term b1. And then similarly h2 is small gain or L stable if there exists some finite gain k2, so that a magnitude of the output of the h2 is some gain times magnitude of the input plus some biasing term. Then the closed loop system, this if these are individually stable, then the closed loop combination is input output stable if only if the product of the two gains of these two stable systems is less than 1. So moreover, if u1 belongs to extended Lebesgue spaces and u2 also belong to extended Lebesgue spaces, then you can also determine the upper bound on the inputs of the systems in terms of the u and u1 u2 and the gains k1 k2. So this is small gain theorem, which helps us in determining whether a feedback combination of two individually input output stable systems is indeed input output stable or not. And it turns out that if the product of the gains of these two individually stable systems is less than 1, then the feedback combination of these systems is also input output stable. So example of Lebesgue stability, suppose we have a nonlinearity phi, a function from phi from real numbers to real numbers, where phi belongs to sector k1 to k2, and we define y is equal to phi of u of t as the output. And then in this case, because this is a sector nonlinearity, the magnitude of the output will always be less than or equal to maximum of the two values in the sector times the input to the nonlinearity. And also y of p will be so if k is the maximum of k1 and k2, then y of p is less than or equal to k times u of p. The sector nonlinearity is small gain stable with gain is equal to maximum of k1 and k2. So suppose we have, with this nonlinearity we have input is equal to u square. Then if we apply the u square input to this nonlinearity, then u of t will be and then also let u of t to be equal to 1 over square root of 1 minus t for t between 0 and 1, and u of t equal to 0 for t greater than 1. Then the magnitude of u1, that is the integral from 0 to 1 into absolute value of 1 over square root of 1 minus t, that is 2 by 3. So input has finite magnitude, but the output will have, which is the square of the input, that will be infinite in magnitude. So the phi in this case is unstable, it's not small gain stable. Next is the describing function, which is the third and final result in the classical nonlinear theory results discussed in our course. So in describing function problem, what we have is we have an LTI system with a periodic nonlinearity, and in the assumptions in this case are we suspect the periodic behavior because the nonlinearity is periodic, and we seek to analyze its presence or absence. So we seek to analyze whether in the presence of periodic nonlinearity, this whole feedback system, does it have a periodic solution or not, and we seek to find the frequency and magnitude of that periodic solution. And input in this case is a constant value like a unit step or something. So we are not willing to assume a small magnitude of the periodic solution, we are only looking for non-trivial periodic solutions. Then for that, in order to find the periodic solutions, we have to first define the describing function of the periodic nonlinearity. The describing function psi of a is called the function psi of a is called the describing function of the nonlinearity if it is defined by this following equation: 2 omega over pi a integral from 0 to pi over omega, nonlinearity evaluated at a times sine omega t, and this whole nonlinearity multiplied by sine. So this is basically a component in the Fourier series. Basically it's the first harmonic of the Fourier series. Describing function is obtained by applying sinusoidal input to the nonlinearity and calculating the Fourier coefficient of the first harmonic at the output. So this is the depiction, this is a diagram related to this equation. You apply a sinusoidal input to the nonlinearity and you find the first harmonic of the Fourier series of this nonlinearity, the output of the result of applying sinusoidal input to the nonlinearity. This is how you find the so psi of A is the first harmonic of the Fourier series of this thing. Okay, so first order harmonic balance equation, if we apply that, that says that g of j omega into psi of A plus 1 equals 0. G is the transfer function of the LTI system, which is included in the feedback configuration. Above equation implies two things. First is that 1 plus psi of A into real part of g of j omega is 0, and second is that imaginary part of g of j omega is 0. So this equation is broken down into two equations because this is a complex equation. So this is the real part of this above equation and this is the imaginary part of this above equation. And then using these equations, using equation B, we can solve for all the frequencies that render imaginary part of g of j omega equals 0, and all the values of omega that we find by solving B can be used in A to find the corresponding magnitude of the oscillation in the solution of feedback system. So if you apply 1 plus psi of A into real part of g of j omega, if you substitute the value of omega obtained by solving B into this equation, you find the value of psi of A, and in turn the value of A, which is the magnitude of periodic solution, if there is any periodic solution at all. So we look at an example of this, but note that the possible frequency of oscillations are determined only by g of s. So this describing function has no role in defining the frequency of the periodic solution. It only has a role in defining the magnitude of the periodic solution. The nonlinearity determines the value of A, and that is a possible amplitude of the oscillation, but the transfer function determines the frequency of the oscillation. So we look at an example. Consider the system 1 over s into s plus 1 into s plus 2, and then this g of j omega, corresponding g of j omega becomes like this. And now if we are to see if there is any possible frequency of oscillation, we solve this imaginary part of g of j omega equals 0, and this will give us omega equal plus minus square root of 2. And since we are dealing with physical systems, we only consider positive frequencies. Then we continue that for omega equal plus square root of 2, we need to evaluate the equation A, and equation A gives us a real part of g of j omega at omega equal. So for solving equation A, we need to know the real part of g of j omega, and real part of g of j omega at omega equal plus square root of 2 is minus 1 by 6. So if we plug in this value into equation A, this gives us that the describing function should be equal to value 6. So this is the value of describing function, and now in order to determine whether this is possible or not, we have to introduce the nonlinearity. And now we let us see what kind of nonlinearities can result in a periodic behavior. Consider the signum nonlinearity, so which is basically it toggles between value 1 and minus 1 at the point y equals 0. So we assume for clarity that y of 0 is 0, n of 0 is 0, otherwise n would be undefined at y equals 0. So if we calculate the describing function of the signum nonlinearity. It turns out to be 4 over pi into a, and then if we put 4 over pi into a equals 6 to satisfy equation A of the first order harmonic balance, then this gives us the magnitude of non-periodic solution to be 2 over 3 pi. So this means that the signum nonlinearity in the feedback of this transfer function actually does result in a periodic solution with frequency of square root of 2 and amplitude of 2 over 3 pi. Similarly, we can look at another example. Let us keep the same transfer function but change the nonlinearity and see if the periodic solution still exists. So this time we take saturation nonlinearity instead of signum nonlinearity. So describing function of this type of nonlinearity is given by this. Describing function is 1 for a between 0 and 1, and describing function is 2 by pi into sine inverse 1 over a plus 1 over a into square root of this whole thing for a greater than 1. Here you can see that describing function is less than or equal to 1 for all values of a. So this means describing function can never be 6. This means that first order harmonic balance can never be satisfied, and this means that saturation nonlinearity does not give a periodic solution with the given transfer function in this closed loop system. So these are the examples of describing function based approach. This concludes today's part of the review lecture, and at the end I will briefly revise the whole discussion of today so that you have a quick recap of what we have discussed. We started our discussion with the LQR based method to determine the CLF, which can be used to define the Sontag controller for the nonlinear system. In just a minute we will be there, and there it is. So this is where we started our discussion. Determination of CLF using LQR approach. You linearize the system, you pose the LQR problem, you solve the Riccati equation, and you use the solution of the Riccati equation to construct a CLF, and then you can use that CLF to construct the Sontag controller. Then we discussed the backstepping control design, where we have two parts of the state space, state variables, and first part we used to define a virtual control law, and we use the virtual control law to stabilize half of the system, and then we stabilize the remaining half of the system using this newly defined error state variable and the original second part of the original first part of the state variables. And then we complete the design. We looked at an example where we have x1 dot equal x1 square plus x2 dot equal u. We define the virtual control, then we define the system in terms of x1 and z, and once we have that, we define a new Lyapunov function and determine the control input that makes the v dot equal negative. And then once v dot is negative definite, then we convert the u in terms of x1 and x2 using the expression, the relationship between z and x2. Alright, so next we looked at integrator backstepping. This is the result which gives you freedom to design a controller with lesser number of calculations, because it automatically gives you the solution of the second part of the backstepping feedback control design. The first part, which is to stabilize this system with virtual control, you still have to do that part, but after you have defined the virtual control, you can do the full control for the system using the given equations, and you don't have to do any additional calculations. So this is another control for the same system using integrator backstepping results. Then we looked at the results in classical nonlinear control systems theory. We looked at absolute stability problem, which is a problem where LTI system has a sector nonlinearity in its feedback, and we are trying to determine the conditions under which this whole system is globally asymptotically stable. So for LTI systems, asymptotic and exponential stability are the same. And then the solution for the case where nonlinearity belongs to a sector which starts with 0, we have to verify 3 conditions: AB controllable, AC observable, and this transfer function to be strictly positive real. And in case of general nonlinearity, the general sector nonlinearity, we have 4 conditions: AB controllable, AC observable, this transfer function being bibostable, and this transfer function being strictly positive real. We also looked at how to determine whether a transfer function matrix or a transfer function is calculated or determined to be strictly positive real or not. For scalar case, you just have to find the poles. They have to be in open left half plane, real part has to be positive, and limit as approaches infinity has to be positive. And similarly, we looked at an example where we have this LTI system and this saturation nonlinearity. We verified all the conditions and we concluded that the sector nonlinearity is making this system in the presence of sector nonlinearity, the system is still absolutely stable. Then we looked at another example where sector nonlinearity was belonging to a sector from 1 to 3, and the second order transfer function, we verified all 4 conditions and we used L'Hopital rule to find the limit as approaches infinity. And then we concluded that the this LTI system with a sector nonlinearity belonging to this sector is absolutely stable. This whole system is absolutely stable. Okay, then we looked at the small gain theorem, which deals with the feedback combination of 2 stable systems, 2 input-output stable systems. So here the stability type is input-output stability, which requires that the magnitude of the output should be finite for every input that has finite magnitude, and it is defined with the help of a gain between input and output magnitudes. And if the product of the 2 individual gains is less than 1, only then this system is small gain stable, or the whole overall feedback configuration is input output stable. You can also find the upper bounds on the magnitudes of inputs of both systems. And then we looked at the examples that we looked at were for the individual systems and not for the feedback configuration of the systems. But you can imagine, once you are able to find the gain of a system, here the gain of the system is K, and here in the next example, which is not even input output stable, but if you find 2 systems for which are small gain stable and the product of their gains is less than 1, then the feedback configuration of those 2 systems will also be input output stable. Then we looked at describing function problem, where there is LTI system with periodic nonlinearity, and we are looking at situations under which the whole system gives you a periodic solution. And for that we define the describing function, which is the first harmonic of the Fourier series of the nonlinearity, which is applied with sinusoidal input. Then we look at the first order harmonic balance equation. We use that to determine actually whether there is a periodic solution in the system or not. This is the transfer function of the LTI system in the feedback configuration. This is the describing function of the nonlinearity in the feedback configuration. This harmonic balance equation is converted into 2 parts, real part and imaginary part, and we solve the imaginary part to find the possible frequencies of periodic solution, and we put those frequencies into the real part of harmonic balance equation to determine whether there are possible amplitudes of the nonlinear periodic solution. And then we look at an example where there is a transfer function, and we using the second part of harmonic balance equation, we find the frequency of oscillation, and at the frequency of oscillation we solve the first part of the harmonic balance equation to find the condition under which the magnitude of the oscillation is non-trivial, which is describing function should have a value of 6. we look at signum nonlinearity, and for the case of signum nonlinearity, describing function is like this, and we can basically we have concluded that there does exist a periodic solution of this configuration with the given transfer function and signum nonlinearity with a frequency of square root of 2 and amplitude of 2 over 3 pi. And then we look at another same transfer function but different feedback nonlinearity, the saturation nonlinearity, and for that we look at the result, and the result says that actually it's not possible for this system to have a periodic solution. So that was the review, the third part of the course review for nonlinear control systems. I hope that most of the things were understandable, and remember that this review is only useful if you have gone through the course material and if you have attended all the lectures. If you are learning nonlinear control systems for the first time and you start by looking at the course review lectures, that is not going to help you, and you will be confused because the pace in the review of the course is very fast and I don't cover all the details related to different topics. With that, I conclude today's lecture. If you don't understand anything, please give me comments in the feedback. Thank you for listening.